Hi students! Welcome to Psychology 349, Introduction to Behavior Modification for Summer 2026. My name is Shahila Strap and I made this video to welcome you to our class and give you some tips for being successful this summer. Let's get started. So a little bit of information about me. My name is Shahila Strap and I'm excited to be teaching your class this summertime. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology from Virginia Tech and had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up, but I knew I loved psychology, so I kept going to school and I got a master's and a doctorate degree in experimental psychology from the University of Nevada, Reno. And in my doctoral work, I did a lot of work on learning and using principles of behavior modification, and specifically focused on children and children learning of language. So my area of expertise in terms of research is language development. So I've been at Western for almost 30 years, and while I'm here, I do a lot of work on children's language, as I said. Right now, I'm working on a project looking at how parents and children change their behavior when the parent is interacting with a smartphone. So we see this on playgrounds and in natural settings all the time. And in our study, we're specifically doing an experiment to see if parents' behavior and children's behavior changes when the parent is texting. So you'll be hearing more about that as we get going across the term. So this class is behavior modification. We're going to be focusing on changing our own behaviors. I guess I just want to tell you that I've used these approaches in my own life. I've used it for my own personal development. Every term that I teach this class, I also do a behavior change project for myself. I haven't figured out what I'm doing this summer with you, but I will keep you posted. I use these principles in my own behavior change. I use them in my relationships with my friends and with my partner. I have used them with my children. I have two kiddos, Callahan and Finn, and I used these principles a lot when they were little. This is when they were little. Now they are young, emerging adults, and we continue to use these principles. And of course, I use these principles with our dog, Annabelle, and I only bring her up simply because sometimes when I make these videos, she's sleeping in the background. So if you hear snoring, that's Annabelle. It is not me. I guess I say all of this to say I am a firm believer in using these principles to change our behavior. It's not about willpower. It's not about personal motivation. It is about making it easy for us to do the right thing and changing the environment so we can do that. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our class. This is a 4-credit class, so what that translates into is about 12 hours of work each week. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's going to need to spend 12 hours working on the work, but just kind of keeping in mind, there are weekly assignments that are due each week. So each week we'll be reading chapters from our book. This is the Martin and Pear book. You will be watching video lectures and taking notes from the video lectures. I will provide PowerPoint templates to kind of facilitate that process, but I do encourage you to take notes. Each week you will have weekly quizzes. The quiz is open on Monday. It closes on Sunday. You can take the quiz as many times as you like for the highest score possible. The quizzes are open note, open booked, and they're not timed. So as it says, you can take the quizzes as many times as you like for the highest score possible, but you must take them before they close on Sunday. There are no late quizzes accepted. So take them as many times as you like, get the highest score possible. A big portion of your course is going to be focused on a behavior change project, and we write it up as a paper at the end of the term. So as I briefly mentioned in the last slide, we're going to be learning about behavior change in this class, and you will be asked to pick a behavior of your own to change. I will be also doing the same thing. So we're going to be doing this behavior change project and paper. So it could be focusing on a behavior that is an excess, like snacking. And so I have a little picture of flaming hot Cheetos. Some people like to snack, and that might be a behavioral excess, something you do too much. Or it might be a behavioral deficit, something you don't do enough of, like increasing water consumption. So you're going to pick a behavior. I will be doing the same. So this assignment, there's actually 3 components. The first is a pinpoint target behavior assignment. We will be doing that this first week, and I will send out my information about that component. You're going to pick a behavior you want to change. It could be snacking, it could be water consumption. You're going to pick another behavior that might interact with it. And then you're going to talk about what you would like to see in terms of changes. The second assignment is going to be a baseline assignment where we are going to be tracking our behaviors for 5 days, not trying to change anything yet, but just kind of seeing where we are with those behaviors. We'll also be looking for antecedents and consequences. So what comes before we engage in snacking? What happens after? And then we're going to be doing what's called a functional analysis, where we're trying to pay attention to patterns that we might see across our 5 days of baseline. The last component is the actual big change and write-up. So after we've done baseline, after we've looked at what are some of the triggers and some of the reinforcers for these behaviors, we're going to come up with 2 interventions. We're going to do each of them for 5 days, and we're going to track and analyze our patterns of behavior and see what changes we observed. And then we're going to write it all up in a final project and paper. So we're going to be working on this throughout the term. This isn't something that you can put together the last week of the term. As I mentioned, there are 3 different components to it. Now, I've made a whole separate video about this assignment because it's something that you need to get started on right away. And I'll mention that a little bit later. But, you know, this is just kind of the big overview. But just kind of keep in mind, we're going to be working on this throughout the term. And then finally, we have a cumulative final exam, which is open during final exam week. Our summer class is a 6-week term, and so our final exam will be open during week 6. The exam will open on Monday, and it will close on Thursday. It is also open note, open book, like the quizzes, but unlike the quizzes, which you can take as many times as possible, this is a single attempt. And it is a timed exam. All right, so 12 hours worth of work each week. It doesn't mean that every week it's going to be that much, but I would encourage you to kind of spread your work on the class across the week, because it's very hard to get all this stuff done on Sunday before many of the items are due. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some tips for success. So the first tip I'm going to give you for this class, which is something you should be doing for all classes, obviously, is to review the syllabus really, really carefully. I've got the syllabus posted to Canvas. I would encourage you to print it out if that's a possibility for you. I would encourage you to run through the content very carefully. I don't have the capacity to go through the entire syllabus here in the video, but I do want to encourage you to do certain things from the syllabus. Put all the dates, due dates for assignments on your calendar, because, well, you know, I know Canvas will tell you when things are due, but if you have to collect baseline for 5 days, you can't wait till the day that it's due to start collecting the baseline. You need to kind of work yourself backwards and say, okay, I'm going to do it for these 5 days, and then I'm going to write it up and turn it in. I would encourage you to review the work plan and the grading scale. How many points are the quizzes worth? How many points is the behavior change project and paper worth? How many points is the cumulative final exam worth? And please note that we use points instead of percentages. Please carefully review the late assignments policy. What happens for late writing assignments? What happens for late quizzes? What happens for a late final exam? As a heads up, I will accept writing assignments late, but you do get 10% deducted from your points for each day that is late. I don't give extensions on writing assignments. For quizzes and the final exam, there are no late quizzes or late final exam. If an emergency comes up and you reach out to me before the quiz or the exam closes, I will consider extending the quiz or the exam. But if you simply forget to take it, then you're probably going to get a 0 on those assignments. I would really encourage you to review carefully the academic honesty policy. Find out what Western's policy is and our course policy is regarding fabrication. Don't make up data for your project. Plagiarism, don't copy somebody else's ideas without giving credit. Do not use generative AI when it comes to your writing assignments for our class, and do not engage in when it comes to quizzes and exams. But please review this carefully in the syllabus so that you understand the consequences of these behaviors and you understand what they are. This is an online class. My assumption is that you are well versed in what it takes to manage your time for an online class. But as I mentioned in the last slide, this is a 4-credit class. We're doing it in 6 weeks, and you can expect to spend about 12 hours a week on this class. So I would encourage you to set aside time for this class. Make sure that you have scheduled in time to read, watch the videos and take notes, take the online quizzes each week. You have scheduled in time for that behavior change project and paper because, again, some of the assignments will mean that you're going to have to do something each day for 5 days. You can't do a whole week's worth of work on Sunday night, at least not for certain components of the behavior change project and paper. So I would encourage you to spread out your time across the week. The third recommendation is to communicate. One of the challenges that I have with online classes is I can't see your confusion. If we were doing this as an in-person class and we were talking about something, I could see looks of confusion on your face. I can't do that, so I really depend upon you to reach out if you're confused. Please contact me with questions, concerns, requests for feedback. I want to hear from you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Email is the fastest way to reach me. I will have office hours. Those are posted in the syllabus as well as in Canvas. And I have open Zoom hours several times a week. And I'm always happy to talk with you by phone as well. I want you to be successful in this class. So if you are encountering barriers to your success, please reach out. Last tip I'm going to give you is to be very cognizant of how you can apply this content and integrate it into your own experiences. We're learning about changing the environment to change our behaviors. You will see this in your everyday experiences out in the world. I would encourage you to pay attention to behavior, antecedents, and consequences in everyday life, because this is behavior, this is life, this is what we see people doing, not just ourselves, but people out in the real world. So for example, if you're at the grocery store and you see a child having a meltdown, now this is not my child, but this could have very easily been either of my children. We can pay attention to the behaviors. What are the behaviors? They're screaming, there might be crying. With my kids, sometimes they would lay on the floor. But also be thinking about antecedents. What are some possible triggers here? Did this child just ask to get a candy bar and the parent say no? Is this child hungry? Is this child tired and hasn't taken a nap? Is this the third place that the parent and child have been running errands? What are the antecedents? What came before this meltdown? And then also, if you can, look at what the consequences are. So if a child starts screaming, if the child asks for a candy bar and a parent says no, and then the behavior is the child starts throwing a tantrum and screaming and kicking, and then the parent's like, okay, here, you can have the candy bar. Well, that consequence reinforces that behavior. They got what they wanted to with that particular behavior. So I really encourage you to pay attention to behavior, antecedents, and consequences in everyday life. So here's another one. Imagine you come home and your furry friend is curled up on the floor with a stuffy. And, clearly we can't see the behavior, but we can make some assumptions about what happened with this behavior. All right. So thinking about antecedents, is this Is this dog tired? Is this dog frustrated? Was this dog left alone for a long stretch of time? Also in the past, did the owner or did we play tug with this particular dog with the stuffy, kind of encouraging that kind of behavior? And then what are the consequences? If we pay attention to behaviors, antecedents, and consequences in our own lives, it's going to make this content so much more powerful for you. If you can apply the concepts that we're learning about in class to what you're seeing in the real world for yourself and for others, it's going to strengthen your learning. So I encourage you to do that. Look for these opportunities. They really are everywhere. All right, so let's talk a little bit about week 1 of the term. We're going to jump right into it. Here we go. All right, review the syllabus. Put all the due dates on your calendar. Review the behavior change project and paper requirements. There is a video just about this project. It also shows you places in Canvas where there are examples of the different components, because I've done this before. I always post what I've done before. Watch the announcements this week. As I mentioned, I will be doing a behavior change project with you. So I'm going to be sharing my first assignment with you this week. I haven't decided what my target behavior is going to be yet, so I can't tell you yet, but I will share that with you so you'll have an example of what that assignment looks like. It'll be posted in the announcements and then eventually in Canvas. And then start thinking about your own target behaviors. So as I mentioned, they could be behavioral excesses, things that you do often. And so popular targets to change in the past, other students have picked snacking. We talked about that with those Cheetos, flaming hot Cheetos, those are the best. Another behavioral excess is hitting the snooze button. Are there any people in class that sleep in and they hit that snooze button over and over again? That could be another behavioral excess, something you do too much. Another popular one is time spent on social media. Have you ever found yourself kind of sucked into your favorite social media sites, and before you know it, you've been on TikTok or Instagram for an hour? You don't even know where the time has gone. These are behavioral excesses people have worked on in class in the past. Likewise, it could be a behavioral deficit. Maybe you don't drink enough water and you would like to drink more. Maybe you don't exercise enough and you would like to exercise more. Maybe you don't spend enough time studying for your classes and you would like to study more. So start to think about possible target behaviors. It could be a behavioral excess, something you do too much. It could be a behavioral deficit, something you don't do enough of and would like to increase this summertime. So start thinking about that. I encourage you to explore our Canvas page, look at all the resources that are posted. Start reading the book. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 are going to be due this week. Now that seems like a lot, but our chapters in this book are really pretty short and they're very applied with lots of examples of how you can use the content. So I think that should be pretty easy to get through. So start reading the book. I have posted the first 3 chapters to Canvas. If you don't have your book yet, you will need your book next week, but the first 3 chapters are there. So no excuses if you don't have the book yet. Watch the video lectures for chapters 1, 2, and 3. Again, I encourage you to take notes. There are PowerPoint templates posted to Canvas for that purpose. Take quiz as many times as you like for the highest score possible. 15 points is the highest score possible, but you must take the quiz before it closes on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And then also start working on that pinpoint target behavior assignment. That will be due again also this Sunday by 11:59 p.m. And like I mentioned, look out for an announcement this week. I will share mine. What is my pinpoint target behavior? But we're going to jump right into it. We only have 6 weeks to figure out our behavior, collect some baseline, and start some intervention. So we really have to jump into it. And then, of course, reach out if you have questions. I want you to be successful. So have fun. I am looking forward to getting to know you and changing our behaviors together. Okay, bye.